Welcome back to the Eric Krown Crypto channel. Wishing you a happy and healthy start to this nice Wednesday morning over here from a bright and sunny, very summerish-y Helsinki, Finland. Well, a few things we speak about today in the short-term timeframes, and then I want to be speaking about how the higher-term timeframe picture still fits into this, or if it does at all. And then, of course, there will be no live stream today. I just figure, we're kind of in like the dog days, so somewhere in the dog days of this market. Things are more or less boring right now. The most entertaining thing I've seen all day is a Twitter thread between Zach XBT and Crypto Banter. Ran. Just I don't really take sides in these sort of things. I'm not educated on the topic, but it is entertaining nonetheless. Other than that, what we actually were planning on doing was a live stream tomorrow. I don't know what it's actually called on Instagram, actually, with Mr. Jason Bazzino to do the old crypto simps, as things are, more or less boring right now. So I figure that's a good way to kind of switch it up. However, today we will be going over the short-term time frame picture, as of course that did play out with a break of the 20,600-ish region that we were looking at yesterday. And let's just jump into it right now and waste no more time. So essentially, we were looking at this as constituting a break of the range lows on a 4-hour time frame closure. That obviously happened, retested right here, and then back down to the range lows. Now, I do believe that this is setting up for a move a little bit lower, actually, but I want to then switch around and bring this full picture by looking at the higher term timeframes. So in this case right here, yes, we are seeing volatility expansion, the same one that we're looking at from yesterday, and we are seeing actually a drive of phantom divergence right here. I think it's better seen actually on CME, as CME had a drive of hidden bearish. Hey, stop that. There we go, hidden bearish divergence right there. Multiple drives come off the last few highs. So back down to short-term time frame range lows, probably somewhere back in this blue box territory over here, of course. That would be in the mid $19,000 region. Now, I would be cognizant that there could very easily be a wick a little bit lower, actually, perhaps even as low as 19,000 bucks, but I do reserve getting full-on bearish for another big old dump exactly from here, and I'll explain why a little bit later. But in this case, yes, we do have hidden bearish divergence on the 12-hour as well, going back to these last three highs right here. This one already obviously confirmed a local high yesterday upon closure, and we see again volatility expanding from a very, 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 very low level. 12-hour jewel is about to get a downside signature as well. So I would be looking at this as pressure on. Of course, we go over here into the short-term time frame stochastic momentum oscillators. Well, I wouldn't necessarily say this is a short-term time frame, but 12-hour is going to be showing downside pressure as long as Bitcoin's below the same pivot that we had from yesterday, 20,600 or so. So that level matters on the way back up. As long as Bitcoin's below there, pressure remains to the downside, still looking probably somewhere, again, down towards the range lows. Other than that, full hour is still remaining with downside pressure. Again, we identified this one yesterday as having a pivot at 20,600. Obviously, that pivot was failed, and now pressure remains to the downside as long as Bitcoin's below 20,850. And hourly is a loading screen, but also, very, very critical here. But yes, it is still downsetting as long as we're below about 20,100, which doesn't mean all that much on an hourly time frame, to be fair. So really want to focus on the medium and in full hour time frames right there. Anyways, other than that, what we need to do is we actually need to go back to this chart over here and to define where the low side of this range is, which I would say is essentially anywhere between about 19,500 and pretty much 19 even, if you want to be super exact with it. So something a little bit more like this, although I do have that in the more critically low end of this region. But here's the thing, I do think that there's like some sort of an event today. I'll have to check my calendar for that, as I actually forgot, but I wouldn't be surprised to see something like this with a quick wick down and then maybe a bounce right after that. The reason why I say that is, again, due to the higher term time frame look on this asset. So I want to go back to this chart over here as we've been looking at this daily stochastic momentum oscillator and the historical level represented by this green horizontal bar right here. Now, here's the thing. This signal, as we said yesterday, is not active as long as it is not crossed the upside. And again, it did fail that momentum pivot yesterday, which I believe was like 20,600, like the same number that just keeps on popping up, and will now shift to 20,300. So as long as Bitcoin's closing below that on a daily closing basis for CME, this is not playable. So if you see essentially a quick wick to the downside and then price action being brought back on up above about 20,300, then at that point, I'd be looking for the signal to play out and probably going to get a nice big old bounce somewhere around at least 23,500, maybe a bit more than that over time as well. But in this case, I'll quickly go over the signal yet again, which is, again, just hitting this historical level here on the green horizontal bar. Really only happened seven other times in CME's history, and the average of these bounces was about just under 31%, done over the course of just over 14 days. So again, as long as this crosses the downside, it's not viable, it's not available, and pressure is still on short term to the downside here. But if you do see a closure above that level today, then yes, I would still say that Bitcoin's likely to do a bit of a trap here. So that is really the big message that I want to be having on a day like today, because you're probably, or not you are, but in general, people are probably going to get super bearish. Bitcoin comes back down below 20,000 bucks, especially, which, you know, currently teetering on right now. But I don't think that it's really in a setup to like fully break down to like massively new lows, if you will. I think it'd be a little more likely to get some like this, like I said, you know, maybe even a little bit lower, maybe a little bit higher, doesn't really matter, and then we bounce out and trap a few over aggressive shorts. And then again, I don't think that, you know, I don't think that any sort of macro low is in right here either. I do think whatever bounce that we get coming out from this region very likely does roll over in time, but you know, everyone, I hate using that term, because it's like not everyone's saying the same thing, but the general sort of thesis in this market right now, it seems like to me, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but what I typically see around is that Bitcoin's gonna maybe dump one more time or just go lower from here, and then it's gonna bottom in September and October, and then it's gonna be straight to the moon mission again. Maybe. I'd like to play this one by ear myself, but ultimately, you know, in the short term, I would be looking at, again, 20,600 as a big pivot on a closing basis now for those medium and higher term time frames. As long as Bitcoin's below there, risk does remain to the downside still in the short term, maybe something like this, and then we'll come back at it tomorrow. Other than that, you know, going back to this chart over here, similar to what we looked at on the daily stochastic momentum levels over here, you know, it's just not, it's not what's it called? It's not reasonable to be looking at, or it's not that it's not reasonable, it's not viable. Yes, that's what I'm looking for. It's not viable until we actually get another daily stochastic momentum across the upside, which right now, again, it is to the downside. That pivot is at 20,300. So very, 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 very important right there. Other than that, you know, pretty boring day, in my opinion. I suppose I should just very quickly and briefly talk about invalidations. Well, I mean, we kind of already did. I would say it's 20,700 to the upside now on a 4-hour time frame closing basis for a pivot right here. And then, yeah, I'd be looking for another move back up towards our range highs, which is just below 22. But ultimately, you know, I think today's going to be a mostly boring day, to be quite frank with you. Probably the next week's going to be mostly boring as well. So with that in mind, I'm looking at my notes over here. Is there anything else to be speaking about? Not really. Got the old buy bit shell. Actually, I do want to give a shout out to the team there for the World Series of Trading. I barely even put any effort into it myself. I know that sounds terrible, but like there just hasn't been too many setups for me. But we're actually like top 50 team right now, which is pretty fucking good because our team's like relatively small compared to you know, the teams that have like hundreds or thousands of people, for example, and we're actually doing quite well, and we'll see how that goes through. So I just want to give a quick shout out to you, and then also, yes, oh yeah, I should probably give a shout out to this as well, for Bybit, my shill link in the description below. I should let you know that it does award you 0% maker fees, so that's kind of why I've been a little bit more on it recently, which I typically don't do, but I do feel that's, you know, that is a promotion worth promoting, because that is more money in your pocket. Of course, at the end of the day, when it comes to leverage trading and when it comes to trading at all, if you don't actually have a strategy that you back tested, which you can do for free on the Krown trading application, or, you know, Excel or pen and paper, whatever you decide, you know, trading in any amount is not going to be profitable, at least in my opinion, or my experience, I should say. So please make sure that you have that in store first, and then, you know, then potentially consider it if it makes sense for you. Anyways, I'm going to be signing off on that note. I wish you well, take care, and see you soon.